Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is having a good spring break. And I wanted to go ahead and post a video I've been kind of thinking about for a while on the European alliance system. And this is something, in my opinion, that makes World War One so much different than World War Two. World War One, in my opinion, had a very, very, very slow buildup um, as compared to World War II. Europe had been through what was called the long 19th century. And it was a period, and during this time period, once the French Revolution ends and Napoleon is sent to St. Helena, a period of relative peace is going to last for well over 100 years. And um, there'll be some conflicts with the Crimean War and a few other wars, but for the most part, this is a relatively peaceful time in Europe, and there's a couple reasons for this. One is that after Napoleon is exiled, you have the concert of Europe that begins to start, and as we talked about in class, this is where many European countries are working together to put out fires to try to create an environment where no one nation is going to rise up above anyone else. And the key in that is to isolate France. And this is the time of Metternich, where he is kind of trying to pull the puppet strings and really try to maintain peace in Europe and reestablish the Angevin regime, the old regime. And during the beginning of this period of the concert of Europe, it works very well. Then, when you get towards the end of the 19th century, the end of the 1800s, you have Otto von Bismarck arise and his successful attempt to unify Germany. And he really begins to undermine the concert of Europe by trying to make European politics in a very, very sly and underhanded way revolve around Germany. And this kind of culminates in what's called the League of the Three Emperors. And he also makes a few other deals, but the League of the Three Emperors is very interesting. It is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. And the deal is very straightforward. We will protect each other, and you don't attack me, and I won't attack you. And then Bismarck also makes deals with Britain. He also makes deals with the newly independent Italy, and all of this has one basic point. That is to make sure Germany is safe and isolate France. Well, this all works fine until Bismarck is fired by a new Kaiser, Wilhelm II, or Emperor William II. And as we talked about in class, Wilhelm had a very, very interesting childhood. I think that he had really some issues about needing to really prove a few things. And we talked about that in class. Not going to rehash that now. But this is when the concert of Europe and the alliance system that will lead to World War One really, really, really begins. The concert of Europe breaks down, and the alliance system that will lead to World War One really begins. And what ends up happening is that Kaiser Wilhelm initially will jettison the Russians. The Russians had left the League of the Three Emperors and had signed an agreement with the Germans, basically saying, I won't mess with you and you won't mess with me. And Wilhelm refused to renew that treaty for some reason. It's fairly unclear at this point, but he refused to re-up that treaty, and he opted to basically have Austria-Hungary as one of his only sole allies. And so he no longer has Russia in a neutral position. And then Russia starts fishing around for a friend. And if you remember in class, everything that Bismarck did was to try to isolate France. Well, now you have two countries on both ends of the European spectrum who now are without a friend. And so now they are going to find each other. And so Russia and France begin to make deals. And then the Germans begin to build a high seas fleet, which then becomes very, very threatening to Great Britain. Well, the British see the Germans as being a threat to their naval superiority and a threat to them in general. And so the British start fishing around for some reassurance and a friend, and they fall right into the lap of the French. And so now, through the actions of the Germans, you begin to develop the modern alliance system that is going to lead to World War I. Now, the Germans have forced together the Russians and the French and the British into one team. And what the Germans are able to hold on to as World War I approaches is an alliance with Austria-Hungary and a very, very shaky alliance with the Italians. And when World War I starts, the Italians will immediately declare neutrality and eventually switch sides. And so the system of alliances develops slowly over time and then changes rapidly with the ascension of Kaiser Wilhelm II. And I want y'all to just kind of read about that in your book and really think about the long buildup that happens that will eventually be a leading cause of World War I. Okay. And think about this real quick. You're not going to do stuff by yourself that you would do with friends. A lot of times you end up doing things with a group that you would never do in a million years if you were just by yourself. And I think that mentality also applies to nations. When the Austrians feel like they need to punish Serbia for the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, they look to the Germans for backup, and Wilhelm gives Franz Joseph, the Emperor of Austria, what's called a blank check. And that's the word that historians use to go and to deal with the Serbians in any way he wants to, and that the Germans will back him up. And so again, the alliance system ends up devolving into something that's not going to be security for Europe, but will help bring on one of the most destructive wars in the history of Europe. And I want y'all to really think about that, okay? That this is a slow buildup that accelerates quickly closer to World War I you get, and you're not going to do something individually that you would do, you're not going to do something individually that you would do with friends. And so that mentality also works very well with nations. Nations feeling that they have backup are going to be more likely to be a little bit more aggressive because they're going to feel like countries will support them. And that is a leading cause of World War I. Okay. So everybody have a good spring break, get some reading done, and I will see y'all next week. Thank you.